So thank you everyone for being here today, and I'm excited to showcase District 15 and have a discussion about environmental justice with our panel members. District 15 is a short film produced by Patagonia to highlight the work of Communities for a Better Environment, which is a nonprofit organization working to combat environmental racism and build healthier environments in low-income communities of color.
The worst ozone pollution in the country.
Cancer, bronchitis, headache, nosebleeds.
You open your garage, right there is an oil drilling site.
Our lives are not up to these politicians. It's up to us to make sure that we have our justice.
But look at that ocean though.
Not on this side. This side's really clean. That side's really clean. How was your weekend?
I'm finally 18, I can do whatever I want.
Or Lucas. Yeah. That's good.
I love Lucas.
And you're all like opening your eyes. Wow, the truth comes out. And then what I would come do.
I need to start learning how to ride the bike though. Look at that Tesla. I'm watching that Tesla.
Ooh, you have to put it's really clean here, right? That's why we can have our windows open. This is like the only time. Yeah. We're literally 15 minutes, 20 minutes from home.
Oh, it's in the Trump golf course near here?
It's right there. It's like literally right there.
No, we're not going there. No, we aren't.
Yeah, we should start counting Teslas.
You're hilarious.
It smells sweet.
So different. It smells
Sweet.
like happiness. If you look down there, it looks so ugly.
Hey, that's home.
No, but like ugly, like as in the refinery
You can see
though.
the smog coming out.
Yeah,
from
you can
it.
see the smog.
It's all like gray.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's just gray.
We just didn't realize what it was until we actually were taught that, oh, that's pollution that you're breathing in every day.
Wilmington is home to the third largest oil field in the US. Almost every street has a view of the industry. Los Angeles and the nearby city of Long Beach have the worst ozone pollution in the country. That's according to a report last year from the American Lung Association. The air here in Wilmington is particularly bad, with the pollution burden sitting at 100, according to the California Environmental Protection Agency. You imagine a scale where 0 is fantastic air quality, 100 is terrible. Here in this neighborhood, it's as bad as it gets.
My name is Isabel Alvarenga and I'm 18 years old. This house is really special to me because even though it's really small, for us it's like really homey and I had my family with me. But when we moved in here, I did not know there was a refinery close to us.
Tengo un dolor de cabeza.
Bebe agua.
I did not know that this refinery was actually polluting my lungs, my family, my health. It was affecting my health. It was making a big impact.
Con ganas.
In 2013, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, stage 3 breast cancer.
Pero, eso, así, si uno tiene que ayudarse. Eso, ya ves que podés.
Obvio que puedo, pero you know.
Así me gusta.
I did not know what cancer was. As a 13-year-old, I went on Google and I found out that like you can possibly die. And every single day, this is a constant fear, a stress. I'm just afraid that I won't make it to like my 30s if I don't do anything about this.
My name is Ashley Hernandez. I am an organizer with Communities for a Better Environment. We are a statewide nonprofit fighting to build environmental health and justice. CBE is all about community. Like the people that I see, they're just like me. They're people that have families, they're people that have dreams, they're people that came to Wilmington wanting to have the best, never knowing that a threat could linger in the background. We have to recognize that our access to clean air and access to clean water, it was taken from us. There was a past where we had a clean neighborhood and healthy neighbors. You're not just seeing a Wilmington resident, you're seeing somebody that's dealing with the impacts of one of the most contaminated and toxic communities in the state of California.
I'm Daryl Molina Sarmiento, and I'm the Executive Director of Communities for a Better Environment. We are the 40-year-old environmental justice organization, and we want to make sure that our community members' voices are not silenced. For example, when Chevron exploded in 2012, it sent thousands of people to the hospital in Richmond and in the surrounding communities. My father-in-law told me, we can't do anything about it. That's a real reaction for so many people. We want folks to know that the power that they have is real and can push back against the oil industry and its impacts in our communities.
My name is Gladys Limon. I was senior attorney at Communities for a Better Environment. Environmental justice is about ensuring that all people have basic human rights. And the Frontline community is literally at the front line to polluting industries. One of those communities that Communities for a Better Environment organizes in and serves is Wilmington. It is a part of the city of Los Angeles in District 15.
The community of Wilmington is impacted by 5 major oil refineries. 3 of them are within Wilmington borders. These oil refineries make up the largest oil refinery infrastructure on the West Coast. There are 479 active oil wells and 154 idle oil wells within Council District 15, and that accounts for over half of the oil wells in all of the city of Los Angeles. Wilmington is impacted from the well to the wheel. We have oil drilling happening in Wilmington. We have oil refining also happening in Wilmington. We have the transportation of those oils through trains, through trucks, and through the ships.
So it's a sacrifice zone. These community members' lives are being sacrificed for this industry and for this economic infrastructure.
So everybody has a seat, except for Art. Get in. If y'all are hungry, like you guys should eat. Folks from Southeast, there's some cheese pizza, platos. Today's meeting is gonna be a pretty cool chance to get to know why is it that we're here, right? Like, All of us in this room care about one thing, which is environmental justice. Like, we believe that our communities deserve the right for clean air, clean water, clean soil. One of the main pieces that we need to look at is this fact sheet that our research created for us. The short-term exposure to the soup of chemicals from oil refineries and oil fires and black smoke can potentially cause nausea, breathing problems, asthma. Chronic exposure can cause cancer, nervous system, heart, reproductive, and other hazards. So one of the things that y'all can encourage folks to do is just know a little bit more about what's happening. How many of y'all have somebody in your family with asthma? How many of y'all have dealt with cancer in your family? Bronchitis? Headaches, nosebleeds, scratchy throats, nausea. We are the physical representation of that data. What's a sensitive area or sensitive receptor that has oil drilling in your community?
The church.
The church.
It's where they gather and they pray, and there's oil drilling in their parking lot.
So right where you pray, you have an oil drilling site.
Hospitals.
Hospitals, yeah.
The irony of having oil drilling sites next to a hospital.
For real.
It's not that great, right? The emissions coming from oil drilling sites are not creating healthy people. And our council member has yet to do a single thing about it. These are symptoms to the environmental injustices we have to deal with every day. But it doesn't have to be like that. We're gonna demand LA City Council create a 2,500 foot buffer zone between community sources and oil drilling wells. Our lives are not up to these agencies and to these politicians. It's up to us to make sure that we have our justice in our communities.
In 2018, a couple of CBE youth members did a study with USC, which is a private university, focusing on particulate matter in our communities. Particulate matter is substances that are in the air, but we can't see them because they're really, really small. The scientists told us that the average could go up to 30, but when I saw the numbers, my highest one went up to 120. 75. 76, 76, 77. In Wilmington, these oil drilling sites are in backyards. It's really scary. We're like 5 minutes away from my house, and they operate for 24 hours, every day.
There are dozens of deadly, highly dangerous chemicals that are used in residential neighborhoods on a daily basis at these oil operations. Crystalline silica, methanol, hydrofluoric acid, formaldehyde, butoxyethanol, xylene, aluminum oxide, and there are a host of others that we don't know about that are hidden from the public's view under trade secret laws. And because we cannot prove that this particular cancer was caused by this particular chemical from this specific refinery, we don't have accountability. And residents are the ones who are paying for this.
You open your garage, right there is an oil drilling site. You're washing your dishes, right there is an oil drilling site. You're at church, in the parking lot, there's an oil drilling site. And so we came together with other organizations to advance a 2,500 foot buffer zone in the city of LA. It would stop any new and existing oil drilling within 2,500 feet of sensitive receptors, meaning schools, homes, where people live, play, and worship.
We're gonna have a call to action at City Hall for a 2,500 foot buffer from oil drilling sites to spaces like your homes. So if y'all are down, we're gonna be having a lot of people come out. We're gonna be making a lot of noise because we really wanna make sure that the city passes this ordinance. It's really up to our communities and our concerned residents to get this policy passed. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
You have a good
Nice
one.
day.
Environmental justice is possible. And so that's why it's very important that frontline communities make sure that we're at the decision-making table and we're challenging anything that's gonna affect us.
Can we take a minute of your day really quickly?
Yay. Okay, so you got one down.
Whenever I do canvassing, the biggest obstacle is making sure people are engaging into the community, because without the folks from Wilmington, we can't do anything.
I wanted to leave you this just because you have oil drilling near your neighborhood. There's a church over there that has oil drilling.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
You know, there's a daycare around here.
It takes a lot of time to build trust with our community. You just have to learn to be in spaces that are challenging, be in spaces that are different, because we know if we're not there, nobody's ever going to see us, and we have to be heard.
Y'all don't want to listen to us, but you guys have to at least take notice that residents in this neighborhood want these changes.
We need action that's deliberate and that's going to transform our lives.
What is it that you're looking exactly? Like,
yeah,
that you want from us?
You can help us sign a petition.
I'd rather not.
Okay, no worries. No worries.
The oil industry has so much money. They are funding the Boys and Girls Club. They fund the schools. You see the kids playing on the baseball field. They have their inhalers, and residents are expected to just be thankful. These are really insidious tactics to buy the silence of community members.
You know, when I've spoken to public health officials and elected officials and their staffs, they will be the first to say, I wouldn't have my children living next to these operations.
I wanted to address community concerns about the perceived level of danger about having so many petroleum facilities in close proximity to our homes, neighbors, and families. I will do everything in my power to make sure that those of us who live nearby will be safe. But we must remember that it's private property. Just because you don't like your neighbor, it doesn't mean you can force them to move.
The thing is, you have 1 minute to tell them like why you're here. I feel like at the end you need to make sure you call them out.
Yeah. I'm Beatriz Carrillo. I'm 16 years old. I've lived in Wilmington my whole life. In my mind, there was a chant, stand up, fight back. Stand up for what you deserve and fight for it because no one's gonna give it to you. I'm Beatriz, a junior at Port of Los Angeles High School and a Youth for Environmental Justice member with Communities for a Better Environment. I support the 2,500 foot buffer. I've lived in Wilmington all my life.
Even though we do not have PhDs, we're still gonna fight
In 2012, 1,200 gallons of crude oil spilled on my street. No emergency evacuations, no state of emergency. Not even one representative from Buscaino's office came.
I know that we're small, but we have a lot of power.
This is why we need a 2,500 setback between homes, churches, schools, and oil drilling sites. I felt relieved that I said what I had to say. I feel like I made a difference, and I would do it again. I would do it 100,000 times.
Young people are able to see things for what they are.
Youth are leading the fight. This is a call to Councilman Joe Buscaino. Where have you been? Why have you been quiet while we face this threat?
The youth don't back down, they fight back.
My name is Isabel Alvarenga. I come from Wilmington. Today I'm here to represent my community because we want justice, we want freedom.
We do not take our futures lightly.
They are the ones that are experiencing it every single day, and their fight is for their community to thrive.
I believe it is a basic human right to breathe clean air and have access to safe drinking water. I fight so no other Angelino has to experience the nosebleeds that I've had to go through because of toxic emissions.
It's very important that we remain strong and recognizing that the most powerful resource and most important resource in Wilmington is not oil, it's us.
Dan DeLay has been an inspiration for all of our statewide partners, making sure that we have a 2,500-foot setback and also phase out all existing wells.
When people say, why don't I leave? We just go to another state. I just answer, why am I gonna leave the bad stuff here and just move? I need to change this. I don't want to leave the problem. I want to fix it. I don't want the problem to affect other generations. I want to fix it. I want it to end.
And Jocelyn, Delaney, and Dr. Douglas, can you each introduce yourselves and explain your role at CBE?
I guess I can start. Hi, my name is Jocelyn Mogel. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am currently the CBE Wilmington Youth EJ intern, which is a lot to say, but I am basically a youth EJ intern. I do similar positions, similar things that Ashley does, but I'm more so working centrally on the youth component.
I'll go next. Hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone's having a great afternoon. My name is Delaney Alamio, she, her pronouns. I'm the grants manager at CBE and responsible for fundraising for the organization, but also have a history in the environmental field, so quite capable. And I'll popcorn to Jason.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Sydney introduced me as Dr. Jason Douglas. Nobody calls me that. Everybody calls me Dr. J. It's a basketball reference. You'd have to see me for it to be funny. I'll skip that. Anyway, first and foremost, I'd just like to say congratulations to everybody at CBE on that documentary. It is just fantastic. It was so well done. It told such an important story. And I commend you all for the work that you've been doing and the efforts that you put forward toward that documentary to really sort of exemplify the amazing work of CBE. In terms of my role with the organization, well, first of all, I'm a assistant professor of public health at Chapman University in the Department of Health Sciences, and my research concerns social and environmental determinants of public health disparities. That is, I investigate, health in place. Why do we see poor health outcomes in some places but not others? Why do we see poor health outcomes in majority Black and Brown, Black and Latinx communities compared to majority white communities at times? What are the differences about these places? And it's that type of research that sort of, led me to CBE, who are essentially doing the same thing, yet taking that a step further and advocating for health and well-being in these communities. So my role with CBE, currently I act as the president of the board of directors. And in that role, I work closely with the organization. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but closely with the organization in sort of, working through initiatives, organizational health in a multitude of ways. But we'll drill down on that a little bit more later. Thank you.
Delaney, can you give a quick overview of Communities for a Better Environment, its mission, and what they do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. CBE, or Communities for a Better Environment, is an organization that's been around for over 40 years. We are a member-driven, member-based organization, which is to say that the issues that we take up and the issues and campaigns that we take on are all kind of originating from either our youth or our adult members, and that the tetrad approach of the staff supports their effort. And that tetrad approach is legal. So we have legal staff that support the campaigns. We have science and research and policy that support that aspect. We have organizing that helps generate increased membership and outreach. And then the last, and I think just as important, is the storytelling and the narration of those issues. And so those four elements are used to support the campaigns and issues that are originating from each of the four communities that we organize in. And those four communities are Wilmington, as you've seen in the film, Southeast LA, which includes Huntington Park, Cudahy, Maywood, Bell Gardens, that neighborhood. And then those are our two Southern California teams. Our Northern California teams include Richmond, so principally in and around the city of Richmond, and East Oakland. And each team is in effect kind of respective to their own community in which they organize and operate in. And so as such, the issues that they take on can vary vastly. But for the most part, there are some overarching similarities, generally around oil, energy, industry, and then land use planning. And most of the issues stem from externalized cost onto the communities. So that's us in kind of a nutshell, for lack of a better word.
How is CBE able to work with Patagonia to produce District 15, and what has that partnership been like?
Okay, I'm happy to continue talking, but basically because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, we have partnerships with corporations like Patagonia that provide us grants. And basically, we have had an existing grant with Patagonia for a number of years now. And they were embarking on this new project where they do kind of these mini films. And I'd been to one kind of back in 2018. And so for us to be part of this kind of format that they moved forward on with 2019, was kind of a fascinating step for us as an organization to take, a different level of, say, communication and getting the word out regarding one of our campaigns. And we were supposed to be one of 3, and they felt with their experience that the issue was so compelling and so interesting that they made us the only project for the year. And which is why that Patagonia District 15 is almost a 30-minute long kind of piece, as opposed to something more along the lines of 5 to 10 minutes. And that's how important it was. And I don't know, Justin, do you want to talk about your kind of experience with this project?
Yeah, I can talk more about it. I'm only in the film for like 5 minutes, like literally like 5 seconds. I'm like raising my hand in like the beginning. So I look completely different from 2018 when it was starting to be filmed. I joined CBE when I was 21. I'm 24, I'm about to be 25. And I basically was just like barely in like college. I started to go back to school at Harvard College. Then a friend of mine who was a classmate of mine, Brandon Molina, he's not really a part of the film, but he's also like a component of CBE. And basically my background with CBE is just that a lot of stuff has been happening. So when the Patagonia film was going around, Ashley asked me to be a part of it. I declined because I had a lot of things that were going on my plate, and I was also working with other collective music festivals that are centered in punk and hardcore. So pretty much my work was just like literally like too much on my plate, but I still had an opportunity to be a part of the film, even if it was 5 seconds. But I still work with a lot of the youth that are in this film, and especially that were only there for 5 seconds as well. Going to the screening of District 15 is interesting, especially when Patagonia released it online. There was a lot of positive comments, some negative feedback, mostly a little bit of negative feedback from white environmental justice activists, which is very weird to me personally, because it's like, oh, I thought we would have the same solidarity and support, but it's more so like the same narrative of, oh, if you don't like it, then just leave. And it's just like, I can't leave. This is literally my childhood home. I've had friends that have lived here for years. There's people who have lived here for generations. Some people that I knew in Wilmington have lived here since the founding of the city, which is like since pretty much like more than 100 years, like generations of families have been here. So it's like someone asking me in like a comment section or like at a screening of Patagonia in their stores would be like, oh, if you don't like it, then just leave. It's like, how am I going to leave if this is stolen land? How am I going to leave as an indigenous person? How am I going to leave my own stolen land? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I know you talked a little bit about you being a community member, and I know that you're a youth intern for CBE. What does that exactly entail, and what do you do as a youth intern?
I do pretty much like a lot of the work that Ashley does, a little bit similar, but most of it's centered on youth. So pretty much I set up a lot of the youth EJ meetings. I remind some of the youth that I work with, especially during this pandemic, about any resources. Like we finished our CB Mutual Aid Grant Fund. Recently, we did a lot of work with San LA, which is a lot of it's been virtual. So like the city hall meetings that you see early in the documentary, it's all now virtual. So a little navigating about that, making sure that the work that we do is still more aware and is still more active, even though we're all in this virtual space. And pretty much I just remind a lot of the youth that I work with to like keep up with CBE. I also work with a lot of the staff at CBE as well, especially with any updates, what's next. So whatever I take from that, I use that in the youth component. I make sure that the youth that I know or like the youth that join us understand like what's been going on, how can you join certain projects at CBE, and especially like opportunities such as the Patagonia film, how can you be a part of it as well?
If I can add or prompt Jocelyn, don't forget, Jocelyn,
you can add.
You all just finished like an incredible Regional Leadership Academy training. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh, I can kind of talk about it a little bit. It was a pretty much a huge experience. I'm nearing the end of my internship, so it's just like a lot that I have to work with, and especially the regional leadership as well. It's been an interesting experience. For myself, I was working with a lot of the youth, especially beforehand. It was like Fire Joe Fridays with Jane Fonda, so pretty much like a major celebrity such as Jane Fonda, to Patagonia, and especially to now recently is Stand LA, and like pretty much like it was kind of a good update with this film. The environmental component of the LA City Council approved of the 2,500-foot health and safety buffer. Now it just has to get to City Council in general, which is getting through Joe Buscaino, and then eventually getting through Eric Garcetti. But the problem with that one is Eric Garcetti may be appointed to Joe Biden's cabinet. So it's a lot of time crunch within a short time, but it's kind of like the work for the last couple of years that we're able to get through this.
And I guess I wanted just to add to Jocelyn, a lot of the youth that you see in the film go through like a year-long, training. And it just doesn't happen magically. And so Jocelyn, what I was trying to prompt her on is this past summer, we had over, I think, 75 to 100 youth come into a summer leadership.
Yeah, it was basically like about.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Delaney. For us, Wilmington team, for us, we had 25 youth, and Sella also had like about 40 youth. So pretty much for us, a little bit smaller, but like regardless, a lot of the youth just literally like come together. And even if it's a virtual space, everyone still comes together. So pretty much all throughout the summer that Delaney was talking about, it was basically like a year-long thing, but it was also usually our summer training components that you usually kind of see in the Patagonia film. I did that beforehand of having this position at CBE. That's kind of like a requirement that you have to do as an internship. So that you have to go through the summer training, participate in some CBEs, and there's a question right now.
Yep.
How do the youth get plugged into the training? So for pretty much that, you have to be an active member of CBE, and usually it's every single year we do this. We put out an application. It's there for like a few days. The main thing is that you have to be a local resident of Wilmington or Southeast LA. We've had applications in the past in the virtual, some as far as San Diego to San Gabriel Valley, some to like Oakland as well. So we have to like tell them, hey, this is a local thing, unfortunately, but you can still be involved with CBE, especially the youth component anyway. You just have to pretty much find your local chapter, or you can just follow us on Instagram as well. We post a lot there too. And also the cool thing about the leadership thing, a lot of the youth get stipends.
Next question is going to be for Dr. J. Since you are the president of the board of directors, what does this mean for you, and what issues are the board of directors tasked with?
Great questions. Thank you, Sydney. I'm going to take that first question in a bit of a different direction. What does it mean to me? It's everything. It's an honor, and it's humbling to work directly with the folks that are on the front lines every day, that are doing this work to protect our communities, to advance the interests of our communities, to amplify the voice of our communities toward social and environmental equity, we hope, toward advancing health and well-being. So for me, again, it's an honor and it's humbling. In terms of the specific work that we do as the board of directors, look, most boards are tasked with some form of organizational oversight, whether it be financial or what have you. I'd like to say that we don't provide any oversight. Rather, I would like to characterize our board a little differently, as a board that works collaboratively with the CBE's executive director, as well as staff more broadly, to ensure the health of the organization, to ensure that the organization is advancing health and well-being within our communities, to ensure that the organization is amplifying the voices of those that are most affected. And specifically in doing so, what we do is we work collaboratively to make sure that the organization is financially healthy, is well funded. To give you an example of this, several board members participate in what we call board subcommittees. One of those is the Sustainability Committee. We meet just about every month on this subcommittee to discuss, how can we sort of bring in more donors? How can we get more people to participate in the organization? And I'll actually use this opportunity as a rather selfish plug to say, hey, look, folks, everybody on this call, if you want to throw $5 a month to CBE, it's a huge help. Even a tiny donation can really go a long way. As you'll see, you've noticed this in, for example, political elections. The Obama initiative, he only took small allotments of money, and it really led to a lot. So did Biden. So we work in that way. We work through the sort of initiatives that the organization is working on. What are they doing within communities? And the board brings a range of expertise to advise in this way. Look, CBE has a triad approach, right, to advancing health and well-being, and includes research, legal, and organizing. So we ensure that our board is composed of members that can actually offer keen insights in each of those areas. For example, I'm a researcher. So often I'll share the research that I do directly with the organization. We have legal representation on the board. We have people from other community organizing organizations, and as well as people that have experience in finance, et cetera. So even further, what's very cool is what we're trying to do on the board is ensure that, while the organization is well represented by the communities that they're working in, we're trying to ensure that the board is well represented by those communities as well. So a key example of this, 2 of our board members are actually former Youth Edge members, which is very cool. And they are instrumental to the board. They're young, they're from the community, they're part of the community still, yet, provide these wonderful representations, grounded knowledge of environmental justice challenges and how we can work together collaboratively to meet those. And I'll pause there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a reminder, Mackenzie has dropped the link to the CBE website. So if you want to donate or be a donating member, feel free to visit that website. She just dropped it in right now. So this next question, I know.
Sydney, I think Delaney wanted to chime in.
I did. I did. I just wanted to build on Jason's comment regarding that youth and our members have kind of carry their experience throughout the organization. And as Jason said, having moved through the system to being board members, to even our current executive director and our SoCal program director are both former youth organizers or members. So that's incredible. And then I also wanted just to add to Jason's ask in terms of being a part of CBE, and it's going to be in a story, right? And the story is that the ask is not so much necessarily to support the organization, just to support the organization, but it's a recognition that efforts that you saw in the film around District 15 and the oil drilling require allies. And the reason why we require allies, and that allyship can come in the form of money, monetary, which is also always welcome, but also allyship in terms of supporting the cause and the issue. So even though you're in Chapman and maybe in Orange County right now, you could be from the city of LA at some point in terms of where you grew up or whatnot, or you can even be with a group that can support the effort here by writing to the mayor and the city council. And the reason why I'm asking or kind of playing on this allyship is, the youth that you saw there are all, at the time of the filming, most of the younger, or if not the same age as most of the youth on this call today, right? And so if you can imagine being a 17 to 19-year-old and you're doing what you think is this great work in bringing to the forefront the issue of neighborhood oil drilling, to then one day wake up and you find in the mail a lawsuit that's directed at you. That is pretty frightening, to be being sued by who? By the oil companies and their respective allies. And so this whole push that we have in the film, yes, it's directed towards individual owners of these drilling sites and refining, and that you could throw out, you know, the constant names of Chevron, Valero. Those are the large ones, but you know, we have local ones. Jocelyn, is it E&W, or I forgot the...
Orin EMP, and I also live very close to the Marathon Refinery,
Yeah.
which literally was basically almost on fire on February, and I was like...
Yeah, and so all the way up and down the line, these companies themselves have allies that are called the Western States Petroleum Association, that are called CIPA, which is the California Independent Petroleum Association. And why I bring that up is because it was CIPA, the California Independent Petroleum Association, that sued our youth. And it was called a SLAPP suit. So I'm not sure if this group is familiar with what SLAPP suits are. And they are strategic lawsuits against public participation. And to be a youth, to get served with a SLAPP suit is very, one, frightening, but very eye-opening to the lengths that the oil industry and its allies will go to ensure that public participation is silenced. And, you know, fortunately, you know, we were successful in our litigation. Why? Because we have legal staff to support our members, like we said. That's one of the tetrad, right? But we also had some organizational allies. But and we were successful all the way to the state Supreme Court, and we rebuffed all the suits against the youth. And why? Simply because they don't want to be the burden of a pollution or an externalized, you know, cost of an extractive system. And so I'm here today to kind of, along with Jason, to prop up this idea of allyship. And that allyship can come in a variety of forms. And again, we talked about monetary, but also could be, you know, texting that number, still legitimate voice, sending a letter to the city mayor or city council, you know, to take this item on. So thank you for that time.
Delaney, if you don't mind, I'd like to, oh, Jocelyn, sorry, please.
Oh no, you're good. I just saw something pop up in the section. It says, how have we dealt with something like the pandemic? How have public issues and environmental injustice intersected? Thank you. So kind of like what I recently mentioned, it's been a challenge dealing with the pandemic, and especially organizing youth. Recently, we just finished our CBE mutual aid fund, where about, Delaney, how many people got funded through the mutual aid fund?
Yeah, so CBE, to kind of just quickly state the numbers. In March, CBE developed a community fund to support members confronting the cascading impacts of COVID-19. So not only the health impacts, but also the economic impacts associated with utility, rent, and just basic necessities because of either job loss, job rejection. And we were able to kind of raise over $160,000 to distribute direct aid to community members in Wilmington, Southeast LA, East Oakland, Richmond. And that accounted for almost 500 families that received direct aid over the last 5 months to help them weather the impacts associated with COVID-19. And as we know, the impacts, as Jason has noted and as Jocelyn has mentioned, the impacts from COVID-19 are heavily felt within BIPOC communities. And it is incredible that that these resources continue to kind of stay viable?
It's also kind of for myself personally is that so if I were to catch COVID-19, it would literally be catastrophic because I have asthma, as you can see right here is my personal little best friend. But I have asthma and as well as other chronic issues due to living near environmentally racist neighborhood. I'm just going to be very blunt like that. So pretty much like for a lot of families that I know in Wilmington or in Southeast LA, COVID-19 is very catastrophic. So pretty much like if your family caught COVID or if someone like myself caught COVID, I can contaminate other family members. Or a lot of the youth that I've worked with, their parents are also essential workers, caught COVID. I know Ashley, who was featured in our documentary, her mother also caught COVID as well. And they're all something in common is that they're all essential workers and they're all BIPOC. And it's also because we live in these environmentally racist neighborhoods, a lot of us will feel COVID instantly. For myself, I had an asthma attack recently that was also very big eye opener for my own health. Is if I were to catch COVID, I would probably not be here. Just being very honest. And for a lot of these intersections is that pretty much being in like an environmentally unjust neighborhood is that the need for mutual aid is much greater. The need to have a 2,500-foot health and safety buffer is much greater. And especially the need for more additional resources as well because of the pandemic, it's more greater than you think. And it's pretty much like if you're in Orange County, you see like the differences in Orange County versus somewhere in like Wilmington or Southeast LA. There's some people that are resistant to masks. There's some people that are like covered up, all decked out, because if we caught COVID, it would be more catastrophic.
There's a question. Oh, sorry.
Jocelyn. Sorry, Sydney. I just wanted to emphasize one more point because I think Jocelyn's talking about something that's very important here, and it segues perfectly from Delaney's commentary. And I'll just say this, right? We're predominantly talking about Wilmington today. We're talking about the communities that CBE works directly in. But in terms of supporting the organization or participating in some of the organizational initiatives, I think it's important to remember that some of the issues that we're talking about today, Jocelyn brings up COVID, right, are impacting BIPOC, Black and Brown communities more broadly, right? It's not just in the areas that we're talking about. So some of y'all are in Orange County. We're seeing some of these things in Santa Ana, for example, right? We're seeing dramatic COVID impacts there. We're seeing dramatic air quality impacts there. A lot of the issues that we're discussing today. So I just want to finish off this segment by emphasizing that supporting organizations like CBE, again, as Delaney said, is not just supporting those communities or those organizations, but it's supporting all of our communities in some way that are being impacted by these challenges.
Yes, I agree with that too. Santa Ana and also Anaheim are hugely affected by COVID-19. I have friends personally from Santa Ana that are part of the punk community where their families are just devastated by COVID-19. So I can also, there's one more question too. I think Jason or Delaney, you can take on this question.
Sure. So the question, just in case everybody doesn't have the chat up, is what is the current status of the 25-foot buffer ordinance? And there's a concern that if it passes, the oil industry would simply stay put and not kind of adhere to the buffer. And is there anything in place to prevent that? So happily, I can report today, since it just became, I saw it come over my email communication this morning, was that the City of LA Environmental Committee recently approved a motion to direct the district attorney to draft the ordinance. And so that is a huge win in this area. So what that means is everything that you were hearing in the film regarding, the need for an ordinance and the need for that kind of codified law to come forward to then make the implementation of the removal happen is starting. The ball's rolling, for lack of a better word. And so the city has now authorized the district attorney to, and there's a couple of things here. So for those of you not familiar with public policy and its implementation, creation and implementation, there are a lot of steps in order to get something to become an actual ordinance codified law. And the first step is there's a lot of committees, there's a lot of information gathering. And then in that sense, there's then a lot of directions of agencies to do work to then bring back a formal either draft ordinance that the city council can vote on. So we are now past the part of collecting all the information for these groups. We are now at the part where the city is instructing its various agencies, in this case, the district attorney is authorized to draft an ordinance to bring to city council, committing to a 2,500 foot setback and identifying, yes, that neighborhood oil drilling is a non-conforming land use and therefore needs to be removed in certain areas. Now, the question is what's the approach to removing them? And that is getting to the second part of the question that was asked is, so you pass an ordinance, what then happens with getting the oil drilling out? And it's kind of a two-pronged approach that the city is currently looking at. And one of them is an outright ban of oil drilling. And so that basically would say there can be no new oil drilling that ever happens moving forward. So that's one way of stopping it. The other way of stopping it is the removal of the existing oil drills. And that is going to take place through kind of a economic approach. And again, not knowing if anyone is familiar with amortization, but basically the economic approach to removing oil drilling is to say, okay, business, you've been here, you invested some resources. How long is it going to take you to get your money out of this business that you've invested in? And if they say, oh, it's going to take us 10 years, then the argument is, well, how long have you been in business? And they say 8 years. Well, then the city's going to say you have 2 years left and then you're done. And that is the notion of an amortization. And basically it's to ensure that the business is getting its money that it's invested out, while at the same time having a set time for ending its continued existence. And so those are the two approaches. And the city is kind of still deciding on how it's going to finalize all the various oil wells that fall into the kind of those two, for lack of a better word, bins.
Yeah, that's super exciting to hear that there's new development with the ordinance.
Yeah. So one last thing. So right now, the move where this is the district attorney now needs to draft the ordinance. The city has already identified that it has the legal authority to do this work. And the city is also, namely the district attorney, has also noted that it will defend the ordinance, because that's always critical is, once you pass the ordinance, you're likely going to get sued. And the hardest part is having the resources from a municipality to maintain your standing in a court of law, which means having the staff be able to fight the lawsuit to its conclusion. And so we're currently in the drafting of the ordinance. The next step is going to be going to the city council for either amendments and or ultimate approval. And then, as we've noted, the mayor will ultimately have to sign off on it.
I know each of you have touched on this topic a little bit, but what does environmental justice mean to you, and what types of solutions do you see in the future?
I would hope to defer to either Jason or Jocelyn for the moment, just because I just got done spewing.
I'm going to defer to Jocelyn because I think she's
Can you
amazing.
repeat the question one more time? Sorry, I had to let my sister know about something.
No worries. So the question is, what does environmental justice mean to you, and what type of solutions do you see in the future?
Oh, okay. That's always one of my favorite questions about this. especially with the work I do. So environmental justice means that everyone has the right to clean air, clean water, especially housing is also an environmental justice issue. And people having health insurance is also an environmental justice issue. For me is also, as well as I'm very passionate about sustainability, but more so on the fashion and food side of things as well. Pretty much everyone has the right to access to fresh and healthy food. Many people are not so dependent on fast fashion, and it's also for that that intersection is like environmental justice means that we're more closer to equality than you think than we want. That I want is basically that. Sorry, I'm like very antsy today, but pretty much it's like environmental justice is that we're all closer to being that equal. We're all closer to have Mother Earth to be cleaner, to be more sufficient for us to be part of, where people shouldn't disregard the earth, disregard environment, where people like myself were able to breathe clean air and not breathe like disgusting air. Sometimes the Marathon refinery gases leak out. Sometimes you smell sulfur. Sometimes the oil wells, they get extracted. Sometimes your head's a little dizzy. You may get a little nosebleed. Or if worse comes to worse, you might get an asthma attack. So pretty much like none of that happens if these types of systems don't exist, or let alone we all can breathe clean air, or I don't have to be so dependent on an inhaler, where many people that I know don't have to be so dependent on certain things as well. We're all not going to be so dependent on oil. We can all be dependent on clean energy, solar, wind, etc.
And I know Josh.
I'll just say, I mean, obviously ditto on everything that Jocelyn said. Yeah, environmental justice is all about equity. It's all about ensuring that we have access to the same resources, right? Yes, to clean air, to schools, to public parks, and all the rest of it. But the point that I'll add is that for me, environmental justice is about participation. It's about voice. It's about communities being able to step up to the same table and demand access to all these resources that we're talking about, to demand equity. And in that, environmental justice is about providing platforms to bring people to the table. It's about organizations like CBE. It's about other organizations that I work with, for example, that make this their mission, not only to amplify voice, but to provide very meaningful pathways for doing so, like Delaney mentioned earlier. Many of our EJ members, for example, our current executive director was a former Youth Edge member. Organizations like CBE are putting people into positions of power, right, to advocate for and with communities, to put people into political office, for example. I work with other organizations that actually treat themselves as training grounds to put people into local elected offices, as well as on a broader national scale. For example, I work with the Community Coalition, right? The founder of the Community Coalition is Karen Bass. Karen Bass is our current Congress lady, right? And they also put folks like Marquise Harris Dawson into the Council District 8 office. And it's important that in terms of environmental justice, that we facilitate these power pathways, and that this power does come from the community. And I think that's all I have to add to Jocelyn's very good description. Mm-hmm.
I know Jocelyn touched upon this when she was talking about when District 15 came out, that there were some white environmentalists. And I think, Dr. J, you talked a little bit more about power pathways and amplifying BIPOC voices. What issues do you see in the current environmental movement, specifically with white environmentalism versus amplifying like BIPOC voices? If anyone wants to take a stab at that question.
I can kind of take on that one a little bit, kind of especially with, especially District 15, the film. A lot of the youth that were in this film experienced like intense burnout from it, mainly because of like white environmentalism. A lot of the times Patagonia would feature the film with the panel like this at their stores, and predominantly the audience was white environmentalists. And pretty much a lot of them would say the same thing. Oh, like, you guys are so brave, you guys are so strong being in this neighborhood. Or like, a lot of them would tokenize us, or a lot of them would just say like hateful remarks. Sometimes we get trolls in our DMs, and we have to be like swiping them off whenever we would like public on District 15. A lot of celebrities have shown support for us, which is very good allyship. SZA, YG, a few other folks as well. So pretty much it's like the biggest challenge is that how do we get allies, especially white allies, or more primarily white cis het allies, to go on board with BIPOC voices, especially like in District 15, especially that are other young environmentalists fighting against them. A lot of them see Greta Gerwig. She's a personal icon of mine because we both have Asperger's. We both work in the same field, but we both have very different lives. So pretty much it's like, how do we take someone like Gerda, or how do we take someone, it's just like your ordinary Patagonia customer who just wants to buy a nice Sherpa. So pretty much it's like, how do we get these two together and be our allies? And it's pretty much is always the biggest challenge, is just like talking to them, asking them to donate, which is the biggest power, is that especially for any white person that has the capacity to donate, is to financially donate, and especially take your time talking to your neighbors, your friends, or just like combating that racist troll in Patagonia or whatever on the comment section. But just mainly just like pretty much just like BIPOC always do the work. It's also up to white allies to uplift that work, and especially to also be on the front lines as well. But if anyone wants to take on that question too, just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the challenges are, look, it comes down to dissonance. I'll be quite frank. You know, environmentalism and environmental justice have come much closer than they were 30 years ago, for example. But we do still have the challenge of, you know, environmentalism still sort of characterize, you know, placing emphasis on, for example, large charismatic megafauna, you know, the polar bears, you know, shrinking ice caps and such, which are critical issues, right? And there's this dissonance where it's a lot easier to gravitate toward a cause for something that's really cute and far away than it is for something that looks a lot more like we do, right? People are being harmed. And I think, you know, one of the remaining challenges that we have in terms of connecting environmental justice and environmentalism is understanding that, and I think we do, but, you know, how do we actually ground this and bring it together in a common, a fused narrative? Is this: those challenges that are impacting those cute and fuzzy polar bears, which I personally love, are the same ones that are impacting our Black and Brown communities, our BIPOC communities. It's gross polluters, it's climate change. I mean, these are the same challenges that are impacting all of us. So if we could find some sort of common ground there, I think we could begin to, you know, sort of further fuse, you know, this prototypical white environmentalism with what is deemed to be, you know, BIPOC environmental justice. Furthermore, you know, white folk are being impacted by environmental challenges as well, right? So many people are being impacted. And I think, you know, we need to find a way to amplify that as well, so that we're amplifying voices in unison to collectively say, we're all being impacted by this. Guess what? You live in LA, it doesn't matter what you look like, you're being impacted in some way. You know, I live in a community that has a very high, relatively high median household income, yet we also have a relatively high air pollution level here. You know, so I think we need to find common ground across our communities so that we can begin to advocate more uniformly, but also with greater emphasis and weight on our most affected communities. Because when you go to Wilmington, right, when you look at, you know, particulate matter in parts per million there, when we're reaching 130, when the threshold is 30, is absolutely ridiculous. So it's to understand that we're all facing a lot of challenges, but those challenges are nuanced, and we're seeing heavier impacts in our BIPOC communities.
And so, Dr. J, how do you think we can bring these issues of environmental justice specifically to the Chapman community?
I think we need to do more of what we've been doing. For example, Sydney, more of what y'all are doing in the Sustainability Office. I think holding events like this, fantastic, but we need more of this, and we need a louder message. Sydney, I saw Rachel was on the call earlier. Two former students of mine have actually been exposed directly to CBE folks. I invite, Nizgi came to our class, Isabel came to our class, and, to speak with students and share their experiences. And I thought that was, it was so uplifting and transformative, from what I've heard from our students, after these events, where, I've heard y'all say, wow, this young person who's even younger than I am, right? 16, 17 years old, came to my class and shared their story and all that they've done. And wow, even a few years older, how can I make a similar contribution? These are the types of narratives that I'm hearing. So I think the idea is to share experience, right? To bring more representation to our campus, to our community, to share those narratives, and to open up a larger forum where, folks at Chapman can begin to explore how they can contribute to advancing environmental justice.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the last question before we open it up for other questions, but what advice do you have for people who are interested in environmental justice and want to take action? What do you think are the first steps? Maybe Jocelyn can answer this.
Okay. Kind of like the first step, shameless plug here, is that follow environmental justice pages. A lot of like grassroots organization works too. I can attach the Wilmington Youth EJ page, Instagram page, the same as the Southeast LA page as well. The chat box, if you're interested in following it. Pretty much it's just like, for me right now, especially if you want to get involved, is share the District 15 documentary with your friends or loved ones. Have a discussion with it with your friends at Zoom, or host a little Zoom party with your friends like this, or talk about it at the Christmas dinner too. Another thing is to have the texted number that was featured in the District 15 film, is to have the 2,500 foot health and safety buffer. Is like, yes, we got the ball rolling to have that ordinance, to like have an ordinance on paper, but we need to have it passed in the city council level. And then we need to have Mayor Eric Garcetti sign it onto it too. And that's going to be the biggest challenge, is where you see Joe Buscaino is very resistant to this, and especially is driven on oil money and also police money too, but that's another day. Another thing that you can also get involved with is just basically just like doing simple steps. Like, if some people already like use reusable tote bags like I have in the back, some people are vegan or vegetarian, or some people just, would rather take the bus or anything like that. And pretty much like I have to say about that is like little steps like that help, but for me at the end goal is that we all deserve access to breathe clean air and to have clean water. And pretty much just like signing on to these movements like San LA, or the work that we do at CBE, even like donating $5 goes a little long way. Pretty much kind of like the donations that people for CBE is the sole reason why I have a paid internship, which doesn't happen a lot for college-age youth like myself, or that youth that do our summer training leadership are able to get paid. And most of them have never seen a check like that before either. So pretty much it's like the work like that we do in CBE is helpful because of people like y'all. And that's what anyone that wants to do the environmental justice work, you can follow us, sign into whatever movements that we do. Yes, most of us are Los Angeles based or Bay Area based, but the connections intersect, especially with Santa Ana and Anaheim too. I'm very close with a lot of people in those areas, and little small Chapman connection. I was also part of the punk exhibition in the Chapman Library a year ago. A few friends of mine do archive work, so I was really excited to see that. That's why I was not in the Patagonia film. I was mostly doing archive work. So Delaney and Jason can also sign in as well.
You got this, Delaney.
I was just gonna say, Jocelyn, are you able to post those Insta handles?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
Or the IG handles? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's Richmond, and then
Yes.
there's
But yeah, I'll just add, I think, you know, the level of your passion for these issues is going to be what you get out of it. And I think that honesty with wherever you go and whatever you do is what needs to come out in terms of your engagement. And for lack of a better word, putting that out there to whoever you work with is going to be critical, because you don't want to be performative in your action. You want to be real. And so if this is merely kind of like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this, then let it be known that you're only interested in it, versus if you're down with this cause and you're down for whatever the issue. In this case, if it is environmental justice, great. But even if it's a social justice issue, you know, or anything that brings passion to you, then go for it. And then, because there's nothing more fulfilling than this type of work.
Look, I'll say this: if you're interested in EJ, take a minute, sit down, and ask yourself why. What is it that interests you about EJ? What are your, and Sydney, you're gonna laugh, what are your values? Okay, what drives you? What drives this interest? Is it an interest for racial equity? Is it social justice broadly? Is it an interest in advancing community participation? Is it an interest in empowering communities to make change? Think about it. Think about what drives you. Forget EJ. What drives you? And then how does that align with the environmental justice movement? Once you've reconciled with that, then I think you can find your path forward. And depending on your level of interest. If it's about advancing community level empowerment, you might, you know, volunteer or support or what have you, an organization like CBE that is amplifying the voices of folks. If it's about racial equity, you might find a path forward where you can support communities in achieving racial equity. So that's my grounded advice, is think about where you're coming from first, and then let that drive your next step.
If I could just add to that, Sydney, real quick, there's a great like Aboriginal saying that, you know, if you're here to help me, don't bother. But if you're here to liberate me because you feel me as a part of you, then let's get to work and do this. And I think that holds well.
Lila Watson, Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your responses. Is there anyone in the chat or anyone else in the call that wants to ask a question? Do you want to be mindful of time? We have like 10 minutes left.
I have a question. Thank you. That was such a great and like informative panel, and I'm sad I missed the beginning, so I want to rewatch it. But I think all of the panelists did such a great job of like laying out concrete steps that anyone can do, you know, at the individual level, in terms of education or just like lifestyle changes that all of us can be doing to work toward this cause. And I like that the first thing, Jason, that you just mentioned, that, you know, the first thing is like look inward, like what drives you to make these changes in the first place? Is it because we're supposed to be doing this because we're being told that climate change is a serious problem, or is it because I see that this is an issue that I want to contribute to? And I think that one thing that's tough for me in having conversations with other people is that it's
I think an issue like this, it's hard to see the direct impact if you're coming from a place of a lot of privilege, where you don't have to see the everyday consequences, even though it is affecting everyone, right? So I guess, do you have any suggestions, or like how do you, all of you, approach these kinds of things in terms of like, this matters for all of us? Sorry, I don't know if that question makes sense. Let me know if you need me to clarify.
That's a good question. It's a very interesting, complicated thing too. Right now, my partner, he lives in Costa Mesa, so pretty much like we're both like, our lives are very different. He's like more middle class, went to a little private school in high school, did some time in college, didn't really fully do the 4-year college thing. Whereas myself, it's more like, I'm born and raised in the Harbor area. I live in Wilmington. My primarily work is in environmental justice, and I'm pretty much, I don't make a lot of money. My parents don't make a lot of money in general. So kind of just like when I tell him about the work that I do, or I tell my friends that are not in my area of the work that I do, or like what matters to me the most is that I take the time to at least like talk to them, and we find some kind of common middle ground. Like recently, a lot of the friends that I know have been more passionate about, hey, what can I do to like be more aware of environmental justice, because of like, recent things like their uprisings, the election, but also especially that more people are being aware and more conscious of what they're doing with their carbon footprint. It's also interesting to like see, and like there, like what Dr. Ducko said, there needs to be a middle ground where everyone can see what's going on. So like some of my Orange County friends, some are middle class, some are not middle class, some are a little more, way more often better than others. A lot of them find middle ground is that, hey, we all deserve the right to breathe clean air and to have clean water, and where everyone can have equity and equal access to all these things. So pretty much it's just like, if this matters to you, we can talk about it. If this matters to someone that has a similar mindset of social justice, that, oh, if they care about police brutality or racial equity or equality, they can also intersect with environmental justice as well. It's a different thing, and sometimes it takes a lot of labor and a lot of love. I think it's, for myself, it's a bit more different because this is my partner and some of this is my close friends. So kind of just like, even if it is your family or anyone else that's related to you, or like you're just your best or homie like that, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work. But it's kind of just like, if you have the equal ground, it's good. It's pretty much, it's great.
I'll build on what Jocelyn's saying with 3 things. Look, we're in an era where folks are suddenly becoming woke, right? All of a sudden, everybody knows what racial justice is, right? Putting things out like the screener will help people to realize what environmental justice is. So I think we're moving into an era where people are more receptive to hearing the stories of the underrepresented. Second, experience is everything, right? Listening to the experiences of folks that come from underrepresented communities can make change. But then there are organizations that are offering a chance for those to experience our lives. For example, CBE offers a toxic tour. I recommend everybody take it. It will change your life. And then, finally, for those that have not shared our experiences, I recommend we listen to their experiences and their perspectives. Be receptive to those that are not woke. Listen to them, hear them, but then offer your perspective and ask to be heard, and ask them to try to imagine and share your experiences, and maybe they'll become more receptive. Because I think if we put up a wall, I think if we are too, throwing the fastball, so to speak, if we're taking that approach, people shut down and they don't want, you're right. May I ask your name, CT?
Yeah, it's Curran.
Oh, nice to meet you, Curran. I think it's important that we are receptive and open, so that we can create an environment where folks are more receptive and open to what our stories are.
That was a great question. Does anyone else have any last minute questions before we close this event? All right. Well, thank you so much to Delaney, Jocelyn, Dr. Douglas, Mackenzie for helping organize this event, and as well as the CBE team that I contacted. And thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. And a big thank you to everyone who attended today. And we hope that you gain some new knowledge, new insight, and hopefully you text that number or maybe become a donating member or become an ally. Again, if you'd like to support CBE, there's a link in the chat. And stay safe and have a great rest of the day.